In the coastal city of Tacloban, Philippines, storms were familiar, but this one arrived with monstrous force. The skies turned black as if night had fallen too early, and the rain slammed down with no mercy. Streets became rivers, homes became fragile rafts, and families clung to each other in desperate prayer. In a small wooden house, Mateo, a 12-year-old boy with a sweet, innocent face, held tightly onto his mother's hand while his father tried to secure their roof against the roaring wind. The water rose quickly, creeping up their legs, then their chest. His younger sister cried, and his mother hummed a lullaby to calm her, but fear was stronger than any song that night. "Climb higher," his father shouted, but before they could, a violent wave smashed into their home, breaking it apart like paper. The flood tore Mateo away. He screamed for his parents, for his little sister, but the water swallowed their voices. He thrashed, gasping for air, until finally he clung to a piece of broken wood and floated into the darkness. When the storm passed, Tacloban was unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods had disappeared. The streets were covered in mud, debris, and silence. Bodies were pulled from the wreckage, but Mateo's family was never found. Standing barefoot in the ruins, soaked and shivering, Mateo realized he was truly alone. Yet through the grief, something small kept him alive, his mother's lullabies, echoing in his heart. He whispered them to himself as comfort, as a reminder that even in darkness, his family's memory still lived in his songs. Weeks turned into months. Mateo wandered from one town to another, finally arriving in Manila, the bustling capital of the Philippines. With no home and no family, he survived on scraps, sleeping under bridges or in abandoned corners of the city. But one thing gave him strength, his voice. Every morning, he would find a busy street corner. Standing barefoot, with nothing but the clothes he had worn since the flood, he would sing. His voice was raw, filled with pain, yet it carried a strange beauty that made strangers pause. Some wiped away tears, others dropped coins into his small tin can. Singing was no longer just survival, it was his only connection to the world, his way of keeping his family's memory alive. One evening, as the sun painted Manila's skyline orange, Mateo sang a heartfelt Filipino folk song. His voice carried over the honking cars and rushing crowds. A group of students stopped, recording him on their phones. One of them whispered, "This boy belongs on a stage." Word spread. Videos of Mateo's street performances began to circulate online. People called him the boy with the angel's voice. And soon, an opportunity came that would change everything. Auditions for Philippines Got Talent, (PGT), were being held in Manila, with a surprise guest judge, Simon Cowell, known worldwide for discovering extraordinary talent. When Mateo heard, his heart raced. Fear told him he wasn't ready, that he was just a boy from the flood. But hope whispered louder, "Maybe this is why I survived." The day of auditions arrived. The PGT theater was filled with bright lights, cameras, and hundreds of nervous contestants. Mateo stood in line, clutching his number tag, his bare feet trembling on the cold floor. Around him were singers dressed in their best clothes, dancers in glitter, magicians with props. Mateo had nothing but his voice. When his turn came, the host asked gently, "What's your name, son?" Mateo answered softly, "Mateo, from Tacloban." His voice cracked as he added, "I lost my family in the flood, but I sing because it's all I have left." The crowd fell silent, their chatter replaced with compassion. He walked onto the stage, facing the judges. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious. "Mateo, you've already touched us with your story. Now, let's hear your song. The music began, a soft piano intro. Mateo closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and sang. His first note was fragile, almost trembling, but within seconds it soared across the hall. His voice carried the weight of grief yet shimmered with hope. The audience leaned in, spellbound. As he sang, images of his family flashed in his mind, his mother's smile, his sister's laughter, his father's strength. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he did not stop. Instead, his pain became power, his sorrow became music. By the final verse, the audience was in tears. The theater was not just hearing a song, they were witnessing a boy pour out his soul. When the last note faded, silence hung in the air before exploding into thunderous applause. Simon blinked, stunned. He whispered to the other judges, "This is more than talent. This is a miracle." The judges rose to their feet in ovation. The crowd shouted Mateo's name, chanting for him as though he were already a star. But all eyes were on Simon Cowell. Known for his sharp critiques and tough standards, Simon rarely showed such emotion, yet tonight, he was visibly shaken. He leaned toward his microphone, his voice softer than usual. "Mateo, I've judged thousands of auditions across the world, but I don't think I've ever been this moved. What you just did, it wasn't a performance. It was your life, your story, your heart poured into every note." The camera caught Simon's eyes glistening. The audience gasped. Simon Cowell, the toughest judge, was nearly in tears. He turned to the other judges. "This boy has given us a gift. This is why shows like this exist, to discover miracles hiding in the hardest places." The other judges agreed, praising Mateo's courage and soul. One said, "You didn't just sing, Mateo. You healed us." Mateo stood on stage, shaking, overwhelmed. For a boy who once sang on the streets for coins, hearing these words from Simon felt unreal. He pressed his hands together in gratitude, bowing to the crowd. Simon smiled, then looked at the golden buzzer in front of him. The audience screamed, sensing what was about to happen. Simon raised his hand dramatically, then slammed it down. Golden confetti rained from above, showering Mateo as he cried tears of joy. The audience leapt to their feet, cheering, clapping, some holding signs that read, "Mateo for the win." Simon walked onto the stage, something he rarely did, and placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Mateo, your story may have begun in tragedy, but today, you've turned it into triumph." As the golden confetti continued to fall, Mateo looked upward, smiling for the first time since the flood. The stage lights reflected in his tears, but these were not tears of sorrow anymore, they were tears of hope. Backstage, the crew, contestants, and even hardened staff members wiped their eyes. Social media buzzed instantly. Clips of his audition spread worldwide. Filipino boy who lost his family in flood amazes Simon. Messages of love and support poured in, not only from the Philippines but from across the globe. In the days that followed, Mateo's life transformed. He was no longer the boy singing on the streets for coins, he was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, light could still be found. Interviews, features, and invitations came pouring in, but Mateo remained humble. Every time someone asked what kept him strong, he always said, "My mother's lullabies. I sing for her, for my family, and for every child who has lost hope." For Simon Cowell, Mateo's audition became one of the most unforgettable moments in his judging career. He told reporters, "It's not about winning a show. It's about healing through music." Mateo did that for all of us. On the stage of Philippines Got Talent, Mateo had not just sung a song, he had rewritten his destiny. What began as tragedy in Tacloban became a story of triumph in Manila. And as millions watched his golden buzzer moment online, one message shone clear: no matter how dark life becomes, the human spirit can rise, and music can heal. For Mateo, this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Sparkle Spread the Smile shares his story, a true tale of courage, pain, and the healing power of song.